Oh man, can you feel it? That's right, Dark Souls 3 is almost here. And if you're thinking about buying Dark Souls 3 or pre-ordering it or the strategy guide, I recommend you go to duckfeed.tv/tipjar and use the Amazon link there. Not only will you get the game that you biologically require at this point, I think, but you will help out the show and the network by taking that one simple extra step at duckfeed.tv/tipjar. And also, if you can, tell any friends you can about the show, especially if they're curious about Dark Souls 3 or the series in general. Yeah, so tell a friend, duckfeed.tv/tipjar, and thank you.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield,
My name is Cole Ross.
and you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a Frozen favorite.
Yes, and this week we are continuing our off-season with another one of our random media specials, talking about At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft and The Thing, the 1982 John Carpenter film.
Yeah, this is our pilot for Antarctic Scream, the podcast about icy terror.
With a tie-in sports drink.
Yeah, yeah, or a deodorant.
It's both.
Because yeah, those are interchangeable. If you ever notice that Gatorade flavors could be like next time you look at a Gatorade flavor, it could be a deodorant flavor.
Yeah,
or a deodorant kind. Like their Arctic Blast can be anything.
Yeah,
Like or an Irish Spring.
Gatorade has had those horrifying commercials where the athletes were sweating like a fluorescent liquid that was reminiscent of Gatorade.
Garbage in, garbage out. Like, just those things are so gross. Well, there's that disease that makes you sweat color. You know about that, right?
Yeah.
The I always thought that like somebody's going to see that and be like, it's me, and then representation, has it gone too far? But it's no. But it's yeah, that's what I always was like. Oh, this is, you guys, advertising execs, do you realize this happens?
Yeah, it happens, and also you're probably creating some fetishes right now.
100%.
Yeah.
Like
We have strayed.
There's very little sweating where we're going. Antarctica for these two things. So this ended up being so these are kind of the thing is kind of based on the Mountains of Madness, so it's not a coincidence that we are doing these two kind of icy terror things. But it should probably be worth noting why we're doing them.
Right. So both of these, I feel that like I'll take the blame if anybody says like, why are you doing this on a Souls podcast? Both of these actually have, like, to my mind, a lot of themes specifically relating to exploration and kind of the idea of existing and looking at a civilization after an apocalypse of a kind. In regards to At the Mountains of Madness, and with The Thing, the paranoia.
Yeah, and paranoia is like a thing in Souls, but this idea of kind of it's not super strong, but what is kind of strong is this idea of a like an invasion or a corruption.
Exactly. That's that kind of paranoia. You never know if your neighbor or the person that you're with, because of your lack of understanding of what is spreading, is kind of working against you.
Yes. So you would know that Artorias is abyss touched when you see him, but that idea of this kind of corrupting influence and having to put down somebody who you once trusted, Artorias doesn't live here anymore is kind of connected. Yeah. Also, it was requested. So we should point that out. Someone just like, hey, you guys should talk about The Thing. And I'm like, no. Hey, twist my arm. Like, we have time to kill, and it's, in my top 5 movies.
Right.
Period. So like, I'm way into any opportunity to jump onto The Thing.
Yeah, and
so it is such a favorite.
In fairness, it's really fun to talk about this stuff that has these other kinds of media that have a Soulsborne connection like this, even if we have to manufacture it. Yeah,
that often. So, and we're going to be talking about video games for a good long while after this. We got about a year of just so it's coming up for air in the icy freshness. And we're going to start with The Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. This was originally published in 2 parts in Astonishing Stories between February and April in 1936, after being rejected by other publications for being too long.
Yes.
There's the kind of 2 pertinent points of that is it is too long. And then that 2 parts explains some of why it is too long.
Yeah.
I think there's something, just getting this out of the way as a generality before we get in, like, I'm as big a Lovecraft fan as anybody, but I think out of all of his works, I think this is the one that suffers the most from not having an editor or a strong editorial presence or anything. And part of that, so these kind of things that kind of are gone over multiple times, I think are a result of it being, it's like a recap. Mm-hmm. Like the annotated version that I'm reading shows the point in which it cuts off. Yep. And right after that, there's just like a big info dump of stuff that you already know. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And then it just suddenly makes sense. And it never made sense to me when I read it before. Yeah. So if you're reading this, that's I find that to be good knowledge. Keep in mind, this is a part 1 and a part 2, and they came out a month apart or a quarter apart.
Right. So there is some kind of recapitulation, and he is very kind of in love with the details of the civilizations that he brings up. And that is probably the part of it that objectively drags the most.
Well, to me, I like the civilization, exploring the alien civilization for me was the meat rather than the potatoes. The stuff that felt like a drag to me was the stuff where detailing the expedition, and that's because that was just something he was like super into. Yeah. It also fits the conceit of the book, is that like this is a report from a science-minded person to other science-minded people. So it's going to have this kind of overabundance of mundane detail of an Antarctic expedition, because Lovecraft was way into that. Yeah, and totally makes sense, right? Like the Antarctica, other than the bottom of the sea, like this is the most alien place on Earth.
Right, and even at the time, there were huge portions of the map that Lovecraft wanted to fill in.
Yes, and we don't, like in his mind, like we don't know what's there. So at the bottom of the sea, he put R'lyeh, and in the bottom of the South Pole, he put this city,
the Lang Archipelago, or the Lang Plateau.
The Plateau of Lang. So it's still like all that stuff is super neat, and I really love the story. It just I would never say like, hey, if you're new to Lovecraft, go out and read the Mountains of Madness, because It is kind of a slog. Like, it's a long story, I think.
Yeah, it's about 100 pages, which is like the only other story that rivals it for length is The Shadow over Innsmouth.
Yeah. Which I think moves quicker. Like, I mean, that could just be me, but I think that story moves a little bit quicker.
Yeah. This is a little bit like to me, going back to it, I forgot just how much of the mythos is included in this, especially with how late it is. Like it puts a bow around a whole bunch of kind of like disparate things from other stories.
Which is really satisfying. So this is a good like capstone thing to read. And then the other thing it does, and the thing it's like the Lovecraft scholars and the like talk about this being the beginning or like a thesis statement for the kind of demystification of Lovecraft stuff. So this is him turning from a supernatural author to a sci-fi author. This is where it straight up says like these things that we thought were sleeping gods are actually aliens.
Right.
And all of this shit is actually aliens. So it's still scary. He's still a horror author, but it's sci-fi horror rather than supernatural or fantasy horror.
Right.
So,
yeah. So as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, what this is doing here is we're talking about like, when I say it drags, it stands still for a while as our main character, Dyer, is looking at these carvings on these walls and looking at these places where these beings used to live. And kind of just relaying to us what he's put together from kind of the environmental storytelling.
Yes, he's a real Vadi
Vidya
figure in this in this story. Dyer.
Yep. Yeah, and also the horrors that can nest in the tomb of lost greatness. Right.
Yeah. It's not that dissimilar from coming across like Thumerian artifacts or whatever. It is. This is something we do every time we play one of these games. Is what they're doing. And the same way that at the end of this, and there's no spoilers because it's Bonfireside Chat, but like where he kind of comes to respect the people we came to is like, how many times in a Souls game have we seen a lost civilization that seems monstrous on the surface, but you come to have a sympathy for them? That's such a Souls idea. Yeah. That, this is a very early articulation of it.
Yeah. You see the reason. Right.
Yes.
Like just you look beyond the monsterism to kind of the rationale, and that humanizes even the most inhuman thing.
And to my mind, that's the strongest and coolest, most unique part of this story.
Yeah.
is that there's a specific kind of turn, and we'll talk about it because there's a couple different interpretations, but there's a specific turn and passage in this that I think is really affecting.
I think that I got it. Yeah. As a quote. So.
Yeah. So let's start with that. And so we're going to go chapter by chapter. We're going to move kind of breezy because, again, like a lot of the stuff is like, how many dogs they had, what equipment they were with, what the origins of that equipment is. Because, again, it's written from the perspective of a scientist for scientists.
Yes. There's
an artifact from a world.
There's a whole character that I didn't represent in the notes because he is there because he invented a new kind of drill.
Yeah, is this the, who did the drill? What is his name? Yeah. Peabody or Peabody.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Yeah. And that new kind of drill, like, I respect if Howie, if you are into this idea of this drill, that's great. But boy, like, do I not care about a new kind of drill?
That's how the Hugheses made their fortune.
Can you imagine like the astonishing stories like banner with all the fonts and stuff under? It's like a new kind of drill, and then like a picture of the drill. Like,
just like coming right at you like foreshortens. Like
like the new kind of drill gets about as many words as Shoggoths do in this, and that's crazy.
But it is establishing this mundane mundane tedium that is going to be broken,
subverted. I mean, I get it. It's just when you're reading it, it's just like, drill. Every time whenever the drill's not on screen, the character should be asking, "Hey, where's the new kind of drill?"
Whenever the drill's on the page, just skip to the end of the sentence.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's almost Randian to a point. Like
Who is New Drill?
He's coming to save us all. The New Drill's going to get to the heart of the matter.
Okay, chapter 1.
So this is kind of the explanation of why they're there and kind of what the purpose of this document is, right? In typical Lovecraft fashion, we have our narrator saying, "I only relay this to warn you off of the knowledge that I once found." Right?
Yes.
There's this increased interest in Antarctic exploration, specifically after this expedition that he's going to talk about. He's a geologist from Miskatonic, and he's there specifically to use this new kind of drill in order to find different kinds of fossils.
Yes. He's Dyer. Is his name, Dyer, and so essentially the real reason, other than scaring them off, is that there's this word of the Stark Meriwether expedition that is, he's like, whoa, don't do that, and that means I haven't got it yet, but you can buy the Stark Meriwether expedition shirt, which I that's subtle enough for me. I think that's pretty rad. Like, I'm going to die. So even when he gets there, just seeing the Antarctica, the bland, prior to any monsters showing up, is scary to him.
Yeah.
There are paintings. Who's the guy who keeps mentioning?
Oh, I forget. I'll pull this up. Keep talking.
Yeah, there's a guy who's paintings who I've looked up in real life who, like, it does, they're these big awe-inspiring pictures of the Arctic, and specifically things that he's read in the Necronomicon. Which is kind of weird because everybody's reading the Necronomicon in this book. Like, it is, multiple people have read it. And it contains this story. If you want to read descriptions of penguins that are designed to sound scary, this is the book for you, because even initially it's just like grotesque penguins like waddling in their attitude or whatever.
Yes.
Like, what are you doing?
just picture if March of the Penguins wasn't narrated so much by Morgan Freeman, but more by Ron Perlman.
Yeah. Tony J's March of the Penguins.
It was these are the paintings of Nicholas Roerich,
yes.
Kind of a guy who painted a lot of kind of like Asian scenes and landscapes.
Yeah, and then they do have this kind of like bigger than life, imposing quality to them.
Lovecraft just seems offended that penguins can't decide if they're birds or fish.
Yeah,
pick a side.
That's his thing. Plant or animal. And the kind of the action is cut off because when they're doing this blasting, a scientist they have with them named Lake finds a triangular marking that looks like he thinks is a print of some kind of huge beast, but it's hundreds of millions of years old.
Yeah.
And that is a time in which we had like single-celled organisms. So finding a print that is an animal that is
in this strata.
Yes, ambulatory is a big deal.
Yeah, and this kind of piques his interest as we go into chapter 2, which kind of details some of the lake expedition. He goes further inland, and all of this is kind of relayed through these very terse kind of radio, kind of shortwave transmissions, right? So this is secondhand, and there's an economy to it. You can hear what Lake says, and then Dyer is filling in the information with what he knows.
Yes, and I think this is super cool.
Yeah.
One of the cooler things that I've had a chance to do is one time I went to the Lovecraft Film Festival and watched the Historical Society do a live radio play of this.
Oh, nice.
So they do all the effects, and they have that, and do sound effects and everything, even though it's just a bunch of like, men standing on stage reading.
Yeah.
But it was a really cool presentation of this, and you can actually get that. They sell that as an audio play. It's recommended. It's super cool.
Yeah.
So they end up finding this specimen in this mountain range that dwarfs the Himalayas. This whole, like, everything here is way bigger than they thought. And
just one single line: Everest out of the running.
Yes. Yeah. It's the Mountain Awards.
Nice try, Himalayas.
Yeah. Like Everest is just like just struts in. Wearing his pajamas from home.
Move on over, K2. You're number 2 now. I'm saying the mountain is shit.
Yes, bad mountain.
And they're describing these cubes that are stuck to the sides of the mountain range, like perfect cubes, like a land of mystery and a dream, or a gateway to a forbidden world of untrodden wonder.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they end up finding so under this kind of plain that is scourged by this incredible wind, they end up finding this underground, this tropical underground that has all kinds of different fossils.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of hyperbole here, but one of the things I like about when they're like Everest out of the running, when they're talking about that, is like these are really like passionate scientists. Like this idea, like he says, the quote here, this will mean to biology what Einstein has meant to math and physics. Like, part of the, like, when you're reading a horror story, you're like, go back, there are monsters there. But you have to like, they do a really good job, I think, of selling the idea that, like, no, this is their careers and this is their life purpose. Like, this would be like, I don't know what the equivalent for me would be.
Yeah.
But like, it would be like a really big cat. But like, finding the thing that you love more than anything in life. Mm-hmm. And then just being like, well, there might be some monsters nearby, but come on, this like redefines my entire field. Like, this is going to make my career.
Yeah.
Like they do a great job of presenting that.
It's this weird version of scientist as adventurer. Like in 1930, like this isn't like the Gilded Age or something like that. Like that this is far after, like that should be a trope. But like everybody's passion is kind of inflamed here, and that kind of undoes Lake. We're gonna see this again in The Thing, but there's a connection here where at one point they're about to burn the alien, and the one guy says, "Well, we can't do that because you don't burn the find of the century."
Yes. Yeah. And it's very similar in that. They also find these green star-shaped soapstones with these patterns of dots. We'll find out what these are later.
Yeah.
But the kind of star of the show they find here as well.
The starfish head of the show are these barrel-shaped fossils, which we eventually find out, like the name that they give them almost as a joke at the start, again, because everybody's reading the Necronomicon. They have a shared vocabulary here. These are old ones.
Yes.
Right? They have these 7-foot wingspans, and they have these starfish heads with prismatic cilia. Like, this is incredibly detailed for a Lovecraft description.
And that's like so playing into that greater theme of like science, because they're not going to like turn away. This is what they're here for. They're old ones now. Eventually they start calling them elder things, I think.
Possibly.
In here?
Yeah.
I think he's not consistent with the usage, but so these things, this is every Lovecraft monster I think makes a good Google image search. This one is really uniform because it's so well described.
Yeah.
But they're crazy looking. Like, they describe them really well, but do yourself a favor and take a look. I'll put something in the show notes that shows what they look like because it's really neat.
Yeah. So they start kind of dissecting them, and you would think, hey, it's a fossil. It's going to be mostly rock. And it's like, no, this is leathery, tough, resilient tissue that isn't frozen so much. And they can't even like cut it open to find out that it's got like this 5-lobed brain or this musical piping instead of vocal cords. They have to like hack and saw it away, like destroying it as they go along. And it is not rotten, even though it smells horrible because, it's the inside of a body.
Yeah. Yeah, and the dogs are going fucking crazy. Like the dogs go batshit, which is another common thing between these stories because dogs hate aliens, and so they have to actually like hide the dogs, like put them away.
Yeah.
So we move into chapters 3 and 4, which is kind of a traditional terror thing because they go to Find Lake's camp. They had heard all these these radio broadcasts from, and this is mostly describing what is going on there now.
Yeah.
Because they can no longer get him on the radio.
Right.
So
yeah, and so this is kind of where things get juicy. We're looking at the aftermath of a horrible incident. And they get a look. They confirm that these mountains are gigantic, and they've got this kind of like labyrinthine look around them, and they've got this mist around them, and they find like in the shadow of this, the whole party wiped out, and the like one guy, Gedney, is gone, and so is his dog. And some gear, and I think that right now it's kind of like set up to, they're really trying to frame Gedney for this.
Yes, yeah, that's the idea. Well, the other thing too, they're doing some other misdirection too, because this Cyclopean city that they see, they think it is a mirage at this point too, which like, come on, they're called Mountains of Madness, and at this point, I think is like, do you think that Lovecraft expects you to do a fist bump every time he says the word Mountain of Madness?
I think so. He's really. I think he's getting paid per those words
because he refers to them like that's their official name a lot.
Well, that's a reference to a different story.
Yeah, that's Chambers, I think.
Story. Yeah, Edward Plunkett. Lord Dunsany.
Lord Dunsany.
The hashish man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is great as it is. So this camp is crazy though. Not only is it like a horror show, where everyone is dead, like people have died either through strangulation or laceration. Some of the bodies are dissected, which is fantastic. And then there's all these weird little details here that I really love. There's like spent matches.
Yep.
Like a whole bunch of spent matches, which I really like. And then is this, or does it come later where they're like the tin cans are stacked in a weird way?
Yeah, that's later on.
Okay, that's so good.
They smell gasoline here too.
Yeah,
and that factors in a big way later on. But specifically, like all of the bigger bodies, the fat guys, they had like huge chunks taken out of them.
Yes,
which it just and kind of the thing that makes this look particularly mad, aside from the horrible violence, is this idea that the specimens, they find them, the ones that have been dissected, they're buried upright in these mounds that are shaped like the stars.
Yes, yeah. Which, I mean, and so they just think like Gedney has gone fucking bonkers.
Yeah. So he said, like, buried upright, it reminds me of the picture of those Cadillacs in the desert.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the so and everything else that's missing, they think it's just blown away, which sounds crazy, but isn't, because the winds in Antarctica are the worst winds on Earth.
Right.
Like that's something that was in my annotations. They were talking about how like, gigantic pieces of equipment will just blow away.
Yeah.
They were nothing.
There's a fantastic documentary that Werner Herzog did called Encounters at the End of the World. That is about Antarctic kind of scientists and researchers, and just goes into the conditions there and kind of how man is ruining it. Like very little of it is white and pristine. Most of it's like muddy and full of equipment, but they go into a lot of those kind of difficulties. Yeah. But yeah, the motivating factor here now, like there's nothing for us here. We need to go after Gedney because he is he's gone, and he's the only person that we can actually ask about this.
Yes. Yeah, we had to find out what happened here. So they head to these outskirts of the city in the mountains, and it is they name track, check a lot of real places here, including Machu Picchu. Yeah. Which is, and it's over this gigantic network of caves and tunnels that actually make this curious kind of singing sound as the wind crosses their mouth. Yeah,
God's playing the jug.
Yes. Yep. Which is just a nice like little word picture. Kind of imagine it.
Yeah.
So in chapters 5 and 6, they actually get to the city and they start talking about it.
They climb higher than they thought their plane could, and they pack their plane up and they cover it so it doesn't freeze over, and they look down at this just massive sprawling site spreading further than 50 miles in each direction of just the tops of the buildings in this city sticking out over a glacial sheet.
Yeah. And the city is made of these blocks of this gigantic like Precambrian slate, and they're all these decorative carvings, which they spend a lot of time kind of describing and going into.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of petrified wood left that used to be shutters, which like I love when they're describing the city and you start imagining, because we know what these things look like. Imagine an elder thing opening a shutter. like it's hot in here.
Well, his tentacles move with the utmost of dexterity.
Yeah, I guess that is 100% true. Yeah, or they just moved it with their musical piping or what have you. Like we have no idea. Or let's be honest, they just invented a monster to do it because they're lazy bastards.
Oh, Shoggoth.
Yeah, Shoggoth. Yes, sir.
Please would you favor me by hand feeding me grapes, Shoggoth?
Shogsworth. Yes, sir. Try to get less of your protoplasm in the grapes next time, Shogsworth.
Indeed, sir. But yeah, I love these details, and especially later on when they talk about you don't find any of the furniture, but talking about how by looking at the carvings, they kept all the furniture at the center of the room so they could, because they were they were like little kids that were drawn all over the walls all the time, and also like the strange chairs that they had to sit in because of their body shape.
I love a weird chair, man. Like the idea of conceiving chairs for aliens is great. And Danforth is just like his imagination's going crazy.
Yeah, and
he's saying like, do you think that this was just overtaken by ice, and it was just a disaster, or do you think that they had actually moved?
Right.
Like could this civilization still exist and be elsewhere? So they continue through into this kind of labyrinth with these uneven floor levels. Yeah. And they're marking their path. They're Hansel and Greteling it. Yeah. Leaving scraps of paper and stuff.
This is House of Leaves as fuck, or House of Leaves is this as fuck.
It's also super soulsy. Like this could be like, this is like Shulva.
Yeah.
Like this could be a level.
Yeah.
So,
and we've talked about these carvings, but they're just complete masterworks. And they have like these details that like Dyer, as he's looking at them, says, I don't have the sensory context to understand what this is saying.
Which is, that's super cool. They're also not, unlike other carvings and stuff that you find in Lovecraft, like they're not inherently evil. And they're not described. It's not like when I look at it, I get an uneasy, like they're weird, but they're not emanating terror or anything, which I think goes with how this story wants to frame the elder things.
Right. Yeah. But the carvings confirm that, yes, this was built by the elder things, or built, commissioned by the elder things, out of rocks laid down before the true life of Earth existed at all. And they find these sculptures which confirm like really recent physical and physical findings.
Yeah. And they it talks about life that is not only before Earth, so it's very old, but also from the stars.
Yes.
So it is confirmed to be an alien thing.
Yeah. And that's what this next chapter, or this next set of chapters is going into, where we talk about the culture and history of the elder things.
Yes. Yeah. The lore speculation based on statuary.
Yeah.
So they traveled, the old ones, we find out they traveled through space, and they have these massive wings. And prior to this, they thought maybe the wings were used for aquatic navigation, but it turns out it's actually both, because they can live actually anywhere,
right?
Above water or in space,
except in cold.
Yes.
Yeah. And they had these tentacle appendages that were supremely dexterous, and they didn't just bring themselves with them. They brought kind of almost like a gek or something like that. They brought the cells that would eventually become all of Earth life as the cells would escape and evolve unchecked. Right. It's kind of like it's like, oh, I dropped that piece of bread behind the couch and all of a sudden it has mold on it, except now it's a shambling ape-like creature that we use for food and entertainment.
Well, it's like it's that Simpsons story from Treehouse of Horror.
Yep.
where they make the civilization on the tooth.
Yeah.
And Bart is about to flush it. He goes, "It's toilet time for Tiny Town." And I think about that line all the time. Toilet time for Tiny Town. It's this is where they also talk about, because they'd seen references to mythos tomes essentially that talk about life being created as an accident or a joke, and this is confirming that. Like, oh wait, life it is a mistake that these things made. Oops. Well, fuck.
Turns out the old ones do roll the dice.
Yes, exactly. So this technology where they have these Shoggoths, and the Shoggoths are essentially these like protoplasmic kind of things. They can create new organs that can do interesting things kind of on the fly, and they can perform like a bunch of different tasks. Like they're kind of all-purpose goop, kind of like the all-purpose goop from Soma.
Yeah.
And they're used essentially as like beast of burden, and they built these giant cities. They're kind of a slave race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love the size. They're 15 feet around if they are in a sphere, if they happen to be in a sphere at the time. And it's funny because Dyer's talking about, like, as they're going in, before this is confirmed, he's like, oh, Shoggoths, even the Mad Arab who wrote the Necronomicon, I forget, Alhazred?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Even Alhazred never saw them. Like he was doing a shitload of drugs and he just inferred them, the existence of Shoggoths, right?
He said they didn't exist on Earth. In the Necronomicon, it says they definitely don't exist on Earth.
Yeah, he was just plain tripping.
And they say that's either him trying to protect people, protect their minds, which the Necronomicon's not a great book to write if you're trying to do that.
Right.
Or he didn't know and they're finding out like new shit.
Mm-hmm.
This is like reading, picking up the Da Vinci Code and finding out about a secret Da Vinci Code. Like there's an extra code.
Oh gosh. So yeah, they have these Shoggoths, which are incredibly adaptable. And we learn a little bit. So the other things, they're combined. They're described by Dyer as kind of being this cross between like Radiata, sea cucumbers or starfish, and vegetables. Right. Mm-hmm. And they can reproduce by spores, just like asexually, but they don't have to do this because like they don't have a replacement rate. They're effectively immortal.
Yes. Yeah. And we find out those stars that we saw before and those soapstones are actually currency, which is pretty cool. Like a cool little detail. Like we were just finding some dollars lying around.
Yeah.
And so then it gets like into, again, just real action-y and tying everything together.
Yeah. It gets into military history.
Yes, because something called the Cthulhu Spawn, which are another like Lovecraft monster, and I think the Spawn are not mentioned elsewhere, but I could be wrong about that.
Right.
Come to Earth and actually drive the old ones back into the sea until the lands of the Pacific sank along with Rillier.
Yes.
So there is this war, and that war doesn't really come up that often.
No,
that's not really important. What's way more important is this Shoggoth rebellion.
Yeah,
that starts here.
The war of resubjugation, because they were too adaptable, right?
Yes.
Almost like humanity, you would say.
Or like AI. Like they created it's Skynet.
Yeah.
Like it's like Shognet. The Shoggoth's time to shine now, sir.
We spent so much time wondering if we could that we never stopped to ask if we shog.
Yeah. If we cog. The Migo show up, as well.
I didn't think the Migo were actually like an organized set. Like they're just Yeti, right?
No. The Migo can shapeshift as well. Migo are these kind of they're the fungus out of space. They are these kind of like bug creatures.
Okay.
But they can shapeshift as well. If you haven't read The Whisper in the Darkness, you should.
Okay.
And then the Historical Society movie of The Whisper in the Darkness is excellent. And that's it's really good.
Oh.
So yeah, the Migo are great, and I'm glad that like this is like a greatest hits kind of thing. Like everything's showing up.
It's so this is going to sound like a pejorative, but I just want to hear your reaction to it. Does this feel like Lovecraft writing fan fiction for himself?
I don't think so. I think this it's not fan fiction because there's not. I think that he was approaching trying to tie everything together, which he had been doing in little bits.
Yeah,
I think that he probably, and he was not as proud of this as other people were who read it.
Right.
But I think that he probably had this kind of sea change where he was like, oh wait, no, they're aliens.
Yeah.
And then wanted to tie that together with everything. Like he wanted to make sure everything he had done before was included in that.
Yeah. So yeah, like that was initially my feeling when I read this at the start. I was like, oh, this is, I recognize all this stuff from somewhere else, but he really is like making a Rosetta Stone.
Yeah. Like that's, it's all tied together, is the idea here, I think. Whereas previously, like they were kind of monster of the week style things, but it's, I think it has kind of a grander impact. If you think of this, with this humanity being this side effect, essentially, of these wars between cultures we barely understand.
Yeah.
In time immemorial. Like, I think that's the idea that he landed on as being the most appealing.
Yeah.
And there was room for it. Like, you could fit his previous things under it.
We're the elves on Bender's back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or we're living on that tooth in on Lisa's tooth. So the old ones who they were fighting were ultimately driven back because they're not of the material plane.
Yeah. Well, specifically, sorry, my notes get ambiguous here. The elder things were driven back because they were fighting these cosmic threats.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So the Starspawn, the Cthulhu Starspawn and stuff can kind of phase out. And we see a little bit of that when we did Call of Cthulhu, where Cthulhu, when he gets killed, he just kind of phases out. So they can actually, they're way more versatile.
They're insubstantial. They can choose to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And the elder things are not. They're made of meat, so much so that they even, have to kind of go dormant.
Right.
And freeze themselves, which is another thing that'll pop up in the thing.
Yeah. So the final piece of the puzzle here, and this is to a geologist, this is akin to just the big twist. All of this used to be at the bottom of the sea. But much like Relief fell, this was kind of thrust up over the course of this, massive, just kind of like millions of years of seismic activity to be some of the highest mountains in the world.
Yes. Yeah. Because so they're looking at all this stuff. It's all starting to fit with them and their readings and the like. And they think like, oh, this must be the Plateau of Lang, which is mentioned in the Necronomicon. And previously, I think there's another Lovecraft story that some surmises that the Plateau of Lang is somewhere in Asia. But here, they're like, no, that was a mistake. That's actually here. And this isn't even the highest point of that. There's a place even higher.
According to the carvings.
Yes, that the elder things are afraid to go to. And that could possibly be Kadath, the Cold Waste.
Yes.
Which we know a little bit about. Unknown Kadath.
Yeah.
Which ends up being a little bit weird with how this works, but again, we'll go with it because.
So the unknown Kadath, that's presumed to be like astral plane kind of shit, right?
Yeah, unknown Kadath is in the Dreamlands,
right?
Or it's supposed to be, but the idea that there is a real world analog for it isn't outside of the rules. Or
like from Neonomicon, which I read since we last talked about it, like that does something interesting, saying like, oh, all this stuff is just things that might not have happened yet.
Yes. Yeah. And they do some cool stuff with the idea of, dreaming in the sea being a metaphorical thing as opposed to a literal thing. So,
yeah. So what happened? Why do we not find a bunch of dead old ones here? Obviously something terrible. But no, there are these sculptures that show the old ones finding this underground sunless sea, kind of a dank cavern nearby. Where they could warm up near the core of the earth. But there was something there that they were afraid of. It's like the hastily scrawled note that's like, don't go. No, don't follow us.
Yes. Yeah. But they head down there when they do head down there anyway, because they need that warmth, they bring the Shoggoths with them to build this new city, and take sections of their sculpture and try to retain their cultural heritage with them. And they probably should have left the slavery part of their culture behind. Yeah, as time will tell.
Yeah. So this is where the action picks back up. We've done the archaeology, and now we're going to find out what happened to Danforth. Or sorry, Gedney.
Yes, with chapters 9 and 10. So they determine that getting to this deeper city would just kind of be a short walk through these tunnels. But they start smelling something terrible. Yeah. And they see tracks of something having been dragged through the dust. Yeah, it's like sled tracks. So yes, okay, we're on the right path as we kind of go through. We pass this large opening of a circular tower, and the unfamiliar kind of like acrid smell that they kind of recognize from the corpses gives way to the smell of gasoline. They find a stack of debris from the camp. This is where the cans were. Right. Yes. Oh, yeah. Some of them sheared open in a way that no human could. And they find like fresh carvings, and they think that Gedney, went insane after, having dug up these dead things and started imitating the elder things. Yes. But he could not have done these to the level of detail that's present. Yeah, we just don't have the flanges for it. Like we can't do it. Yeah. So they pass through this circle, or this chamber where there was once a tower, and they kind of move further along, and they find a bunch of these sleds and more gear, and eventually the bodies of Gedney and the missing dog. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if why the I'm not sure why they're here.
Why the elder things are here?
No, I gave it up. Yeah, why Gedney and the dog were here. So aside from if they wanted if the elder things wanted a specimen to take back home.
I mean that's that's my guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where another amazing penguin thing happens.
Well, these are cave penguins.
These things are great. I love them. These are my favorite Lovecraft monster. or giant blind cave penguins.
Yep.
Like bigger than the biggest emperor penguin.
Yep, 6 feet tall.
Yeah, like a penguin that walks like a man. Like, can you imagine them like moving with any degree of menace? Like, you've seen a penguin walk.
Oh yeah, it's delightful.
On land. Yeah, delightful is exactly the word. It's not scary.
You have to wonder, would penguins have been in zoos at this point in Lovecraft's life, or was he working off of pictures and drawings?
I assume they would have been. Huh. I don't actually know that, but I would think so.
Yeah.
We've been cruel to animals for we've been blackfishing for quite some time, and taking beautiful, intelligent creatures and making them go insane.
Yeah. But they're here and they're completely harmless. They're just kind of mark.
I love that they're blind. Like anytime you find a blind version of a real animal that's like evolved that way, like that hands-on, like kind of evidence of evolution, like within the time that we've been on Earth, the kind of things. Like I really like that.
Yeah. But past this this gaggle of these penguins, the carvings start to change. Right, there's this degradation to decadence, which is a word that Lovecraft really likes to use, but it starts looking like a parody.
Yes.
Right, and a quote here: Danforth had the idea that it was a second carving, a sort of palimpsest formed after the obliteration of a previous design.
Yes, so they're essentially drawing over the stuff to kind of make fun of it.
Yeah.
And then they find some bodies on the ground as they get here, and when they find these bodies are actually, when they get down there for chapters 11 and 12, these bodies are dismembered and decapitated old ones, and they are in pools of their own green blood. And they recognize, somehow that, because of the carvings from before, that this is the work of Shoggoths. Like they're killed Shoggoth style, which is what you say if you go into an In-N-Out burger and you want to die.
If you want to have your head twisted off like a soda bottle cap.
Twist off my head, animal style. So they know this was the Shoggoths, and they're like, oh shit, these things are bad news. It's like the war of resubjugation all over again.
Yeah. And so this immediately, like in the moment of panic, Dyer starts putting everything together, and he realizes that the folly of making these Shoggoths and kind of whipping them around and kind of just trusting that this really powerful thing would always stay docile describes them as more and more sullen, more and more intelligent, more and more amphibious, more and more imitative. Great God, what madness made even those blasphemous old ones willing to use and carve such things?
Yeah, it is the elder things got fucked up, and like there's one of the things that I really like about this, and they point this out in the Podcraft episode about this too, but I also really love it, is this idea that like the elder things are not they fuck up a lot. Like they are really advanced, but it wouldn't feel like Lovecraft if they were perfect.
Right.
Like things are way more advanced than humanity, but they're still flawed. So one that is so cruel to humanity, which I'm into, like it's very dismissive of humans and all their accomplishments, which go Lovecraft. But also it is, it just makes them much more interesting. Like finding a civilization that done fucked up is way more interesting than finding a utopia, and that's what happened here.
Yeah.
And this is where he kind of has this turn where he realizes like, oh, they were like us. Like not only did they get kind of fucked up by their own thing, but he says like they were scientists to the last. What did they have do that we would not have done in their place? In the end, they were men.
Yes.
And that's like, that's such a cool idea for that to be the scare, like the revelation for this, is just like, oh wait, like that's we're on that track. You know, like the Elder Things did essentially what Lovecraft protagonists should not do, which is fuck around with things that you don't fully understand.
Right.
And seeing that play out on this huge scale, you know, like everything is bigger. It's such a bigger, more advanced civilization is really cool. It's like a really neat kind of zooming out on the themes he's explored in really small ways in the entire time he's been writing.
Yeah. And like, just even within this work itself, the way that it manages that expectation, or the way that it's not a straight shot to this. Like like when I first read this, it really did catch me off guard that this is what it would ultimately be about, because it starts out as like almost a murder mystery, and then we find out about this race of monsters. And again, like we said at the beginning, just the immense sympathy that, you know, at least Dyer feels, and we feel through him, right? As he describes, he pieces it together, he Sherlocks it back, and is like, okay, well, no, it wasn't Gedney that killed those people. These things, they woke up because they were under the sun again, and because they're scientists, and because they're, you know, they're just like us, they killed these barking awful things that were, you know, making a lot of noise at them, and then decided to figure out what was up.
Yeah, figure out what makes them tick. Like, you know, play with a matchbook. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know, like, how do we experiment and figure out what this is? What is this one version of this thing that's bigger than the rest? Is it because there are different things inside it? Let's find out. Like, they're doing the same things we've done, and it's such a cool inversion of what he does, where like, you know, because the Lovecraft is all about the unknowable, and it's all about us not being able to understand the motivations of things, and that's not what the story is about. And that's why it's so cool. Like, his entire body of work is about that. And then the idea that like he's like, oh, it's scary because you can't understand it, and then turning around and saying, you know what, it can be scary because you can as well. You know, like being able to relate to this is as scary an idea as not being able to. And it's really, really neat. And like when I look at it as a whole and think about it in his body of work with all of the references to everything, like this is really like a capstone kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, like this doesn't stand nearly as well on its own as it does with like the full body of his work before it.
Right.
And then it really kind of comes into its own, I think. Yeah.
For sure. But the other things are not done yet. There's one left.
Yes.
But not for long.
Yes,
because, you know, we hear down at the end, and again, Lovecraft, he love your references. He describes the sound that was used in Poe's story of Arthur Gordon Pym, another story about Antarctic exploration, or at least it ends up there. Tekelili, something like that.
Yeah, Tekelili is what I always throw it on the Lee for some reason. Tekelili.
Yeah.
And it's actually, this is an injured old one that's being killed by a Shoggoth.
Like down the hall.
Yes.
And again, there's mourning. There's like, he's got Stockholm syndrome or something, because like by what we saw at the camp, they really revere their dead, you know, like like imagine an immortal race, how they like their relationship to death would change, you know, that burial that we saw. And like these last ones, they're not going to get that burial.
No. And it's, you know, it's really interesting and really fleshed out, you know, and it's like, you can't learn about a culture to the degree that he has without having some kind of sympathy for it, you know, because he understands too much. So but now there's a Shoggoth chasing them.
Yep. And that's the smell.
Yes, exactly, because Shoggoths smell bad because they're made of black slime.
Yeah.
So Shoggoths, for those who I don't remember from other times they've shown up on our shows, are these kind of roiling plastic black monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Picture like a slime, but filled with these like spherical, circular, kind of like bubbling organs.
Yes. Yeah. And they can kind of manifest organs as well. Oftentimes I see them depicted, they have an eyeball or two.
Yeah.
That pop up.
Yeah.
So, and really like the brain of Mensis is essentially a Shoggoth.
Right.
Bringing it back to the Bloodborne.
Yeah. But, you know, this thing now, it's eaten. You know, we can surmise that there are more of them beyond this, that the Shoggoths have kind of like whatever happened, or, you know, whether or not the Elder Things made it down to the Sunless Sea, there's nothing but Shoggoths there now. And here's one that's kind of like on the perimeter chasing after them. And, you know, here's a really well-written action scene. You know, something that kind of failed to impress me in The Shadow over Innsmouth here really works, because they're outsmarting it by kind of using their knowledge of this labyrinth against it.
Yeah, because they've done these markings and they really studied it, and because that's what they were there to do. So they're running away. They're hiding with these penguins, which I love. And the penguins are there, and you get the sense of penguins getting kind of being victimized by this thing as well.
Yeah.
And when they look back, the big kind of relevant detail as they're being chased is Danforth looks back and hears the Shoggoth imitating the old one, or the elder thing that he ate.
Tekalili, yeah.
Yeah, he starts saying Tekalili, which is like, that's, terrifying, and also plays into our next story.
Yeah.
So Danforth has gone crazy.
Yeah.
At this point, and really cool detail. And the whole thing has this kind of like being pursued by a train feeling to it that is underlined. Like he straight up says it. But there's underlined by him to stay kind of sane and keep focused. He starts reciting the order of train stops.
Yeah.
From his hometown, which is a really great detail.
Yeah, and it talks about the Shoggoth filling this tunnel like a subway train filling like a piston. Right.
Yes.
Describes it as this plastic column of fetid black iridescence.
Yeah. So they make it out of the ruins. They climb up the spiral staircase to the tower and get back to the plane. And as they fly away, it's still not over yet.
No.
So they look forward, and I think it is just Danforth who ends up looking forward and looking back, because there are more things, and we never actually figure out what those things are necessarily. But there's something else in the sky or high up.
Well, it's the mist. That mist is the ambient Shoggoth off-gassing.
Well, there's the mist, but there's something else there that he sees specifically.
Right. But he won't speak about. Like he said, I saw it as a mirage. Like he looked back in the mirage and he saw all these things that he lists off, including the primal white jelly, the color out of space, and the moon ladder.
I love the moon ladder. So his mind gets broken by something he saw, which is either a mirage or some kind of god, star god thing that is there. And now Danforth just says Tekalili.
Yeah.
And the story ends. It is like this super down note where like, Dyer made it out and can try to warn people about this, but his buddy has totally lost his mind.
Right.
And we never get like a resolution of what happens with, the Stark Meriwether expedition or anything.
We can make a pretty good guess, because if two people can go in here and find this and have these awful things happen, imagine a well-funded directed effort. Like humanity will prevail, and humanity, if Lovecraft has anything to say about it, is going to extend too far into something that will consume him.
100%. Yeah, it's not going to go well. No. And really, the Shoggoths are bad, but whatever this thing that he saw, like I never really read it as a mirage. I think that there's something else there, but I really like that it's not actually explained.
Yeah.
Really good. If you want to, kind of the last total success in Dark Corners of the Earth is a Shoggoth pursuit. And that's a really good articulation of this. That's what that reminded me of. So if you never played Dark Corners of the Earth, the Shoggoth chase thing is really great.
Yeah. It's funny how that game is just the best when there's a chase happening. And usually that is not the case.
Yeah. Well, it is like a lot for the first half. Like it's really bisected, but it's still good. I think the trick being is it's still good in the refinery. It just gets kind of shitty in the ship and in the wind tunnels or whatever. But the refinery is still good, and that Shoggoth chase is great, because if you take the time to look backwards, you die.
Yep.
Like it is really, like, they do a really good job of not being able to show the thing chasing you. They eventually, they do show it.
Yeah.
But before it chases you, but that's a really great sequence that this reminds me of.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a really cool story that is unreasonably influential.
Yeah.
Things.
Definitely. And what's amazing is, like, if there's anything that the length serves for this, is that it can change modes so often. And this is something we've seen Lovecraft do even in the short time that we've been covering him for this show. Like Call of Cthulhu it's a mixture of all these kind of like semi-epistolary kind of things, but this gets even more adventurous with kind of like shifting back and forth with the perspective and, showing you different details and revealing information in a way that really does maximize both kind of the alienness of this at the front and then your understanding at the end. Yeah. It is. It definitely does that. It has that change. It is to a purpose. I just think it's a little bit like, even if that is the purpose, is that parts of it are supposed to be kind of boring to read. Parts of it are kind of boring to read. Yeah. And that's and you can kind of skim them, which is great. Like, when shit's going down. Yeah. But like on a word for word count, it's, there's up until the end, there's a lot of sizzle. Yeah. Or, not as much steak, so to speak, or a lot of smoke and no fire. But
it's worth it for the payoff, I think, like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Like, I really, really like the end of it. I really, really like the kind of implications and how it fits into the larger work.
Mm-hmm. And I love the archaeology.
Yeah. That stuff is cool. It is really cool. Alien archaeology is great. Like, it is a favorite thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so hopefully we did a good job of articulating why that matters to what we do on the show. Cause it really does. Like, the more, talking about it really brought that up. Like, this is what you're doing, in a Souls game, like as a Souls lorester and somebody exploring lost civilizations. There's a great story about that.
Yeah.
Another, a more invasive kind of expression of that is The Thing.
So yes, The Thing, as we said at the beginning, it is a 1982 John Carpenter film, which is actually a remake of a really slow and weird 1951 film called The Thing from Another World.
That is based on a short story called Who Goes There?
Yes.
That is also kind of slow and weird. There's also published, I think, in Astonishing Tales, published in the same magazine.
Yeah.
And
this is a triumph of practical special effects. And it is also one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, it is a favorite of mine. It is also a triumph of practical special effects, which I love, but that's not the thing that impresses me the most about it. The thing that impresses me the most of it is a triumph of economy of storytelling,
for sure,
where there is no wasted anything,
right,
in The Thing. And I have this feeling that, like, if this were like a more common movie, would add in subplots to this, and there aren't subplots in The Thing. It is this very, very gripping, like, nearly, once things start happening, it's almost in real time. Like, there's not a lot of, like, moving around. Yeah. Just terrifying scenario that is very successful at being scary, to my mind.
And you don't think about it because it doesn't look like this kind of movie, but it's a really effective mystery story.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
And just like you don't see a kind of the combination of mystery and action is suspense, right? But like just the way that this is constructed, both to both to serve its purpose, like explicitly of what's put on the screen, and to impart the feeling of like paranoia and distrust on you, and also to leave things ambiguous where John Carpenter wants it to be. Yes. And the writers of the film want it to be. It is just so masterfully put together. There are no seams.
Yeah. It is. If you look at the like facts about this, or you look at the discussion, it's all like, oh, when did this happen? And a lot of that stuff, there's just clues for it. It's not spelled out. But it's the kind of story where you want to find out these details because they're important. Like, again, a lesser movie would have like a parlor scene at the end where MacReady like says what happened, and this movie doesn't do that.
The version of the parlor scene that this movie does is one of my favorite scenes. Like, I know I'm just going to keep on saying favorites, but
yeah, it's super cool. It's not quite like it, but it doesn't lay everything out, I guess, is what I mean. Yeah. Like, it's not the end where he's like, this happened to this guy then, and this happened to this guy then. And this person was alone then. Like, there's a little bit of that, and that scene is amazing. And that's the scene that John Carpenter like convinced him to do the movie. Yeah, like somebody was shopping the script to him, and they read that scene to him. Yeah, and he's like, "Yep, I got to do this."
Yeah. So just what it does instead of a parlor scene, like what would otherwise be that, is so much more interesting and serves the overall thing so much better.
Yeah, it's so fucking good. This is a point in which I would say, like, if you haven't seen The Thing, like, you should definitely stop the podcast and watch it.
I'm going to say that too, actually.
Yeah, I never say that, and it's not because like the more like we don't get like a cent per minute that you listen to or anything, but just like this is again top 5 movies of all time. Like, this is an unqualified recommendation for me. Yeah. I love this movie. It is not for the weak of stomach. Nope. It is really gross, but it is not. It's really impressive to me.
Yeah, it's really gross. And also there's a lot of bad things happen to dogs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If that is a hard thing for you. Yeah. It's also like, just a bunch of dudes, which I ended up like, so there's not great representation in the movie. Like, there are no lady cast members, which, is not best practices. I ended up kind of liking that, not because I don't want to see ladies, but because I feel like in the hands of Hollywood, a lot of times what would happen would be a love interest or something.
Yeah.
Which would, again, no subplots. Like, no time for subplots in this movie. I don't want to see any of them.
Yeah, like this movie and Glengarry Glen Ross are the movies I can excuse for that.
Yeah, it is a rare thing, but it is I think it's okay and good in this movie.
So definitely go and watch this movie and then come back and listen to it. That's part of the reason why I put this at the end. But I want to talk about, just why this works so well and, why this kind of like matters in the context of this show and this series.
Yeah. And in just kind of culture, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this is a more tenuous link than the Mountains of Madness to Souls.
Yeah.
We're not out of our minds including it, but it is a little bit more tenuous. And the part that is there is this idea of the spreading corruption, and this version of loss of identity.
Yeah.
That is part of Souls and always has been with the curse or the dark sign or the beast plague. Like this idea of like kind of losing yourself and becoming something you're not. And people that happen to people
right,
is probably the strongest thing. I mean, the instigating event of this is somebody digging up something, but this is further past the aftermath of that.
Yeah, definitely. So if you want to think we're just having fun, we are.
Yeah, that's also okay. But this is worth. I can't imagine anyone being like, "Oh, this is bad. Don't talk about this." Because again, I don't understand the person who doesn't like this movie, unless you just can't handle horror.
Yeah,
which is also
like,
okay. Yeah, the gore or the horror. I can understand if you're not into that, but if you have any tolerance for that, for the love of God, Lawrence, see the thing. Hear it.
So the film opens up with the weakest thing in the movie, which is
I wish this so wasn't there.
Me too.
Like, because everything that when this is referenced again later, it would have totally worked without this. Like when we say nothing is wasted, like I guess that's a little bit of an exaggeration because I tend to kind of like unfocus my eyes with this pre-credits.
Yep.
Thing. And it's so short. It's just the pre-credits. And it's because it's a flying saucer burning up and crashing into the Antarctic.
Right.
And like, just ignore that. Like just pretend like we don't know that's there.
Just fade up on this helicopter pilot taking pot shots at a husky across the tundra using a sniper rifle.
Which is so good. Like that's such a weird, like, why are you doing this?
It's so out of context and it's so alien.
Yep. We get to this, we're introduced to kind of the main characters in this the science base.
Yes.
This American Science Base with MacReady, who's played by Kurt Russell. And we get this little like brief bit of characterization where he's playing computer chess and he loses, so he pours his whiskey into what would be a very expensive computer.
Yeah. We basically whenever MacReady is not using like holding a flamethrower, he's holding a bottle of whiskey.
Yes.
I love MacReady so goddamn much.
He gets drunk all the time. Man, I'm just thinking about like, if I was stuck on this thing and he destroyed my chess computer, I'd be so mad. I don't want to play chess. Like, you don't take away my only ability to play chess. In this thing.
This thing right here. It's such a like. It feels like such an artifact of its time in movies too. Like it's something that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia parodied with Lethal Weapon 6, where they used what's his name's inability to make a 3-point shot at the beginning, and then they lampshaded at the end, saying, "Oh no, this is what you failed at the beginning of the movie." Because like this is kind of his defining moment. Even if he loses, he won't lose. He will do whatever he can to kind of like assert himself over failure. Yeah,
he'll flip the table.
Yeah.
The helicopter pilot, who's from Norway, and very importantly is speaking and is never subtitled, which important. He lands and he tries to throw. There's two of them, and he tries to throw a grenade at this dog, but accidentally drops the grenade. And his helicopter gets blown up. He starts shooting at the dog, and he actually takes a shot and shoots one of the men.
Yeah.
They shoot him in the leg. So the commander does a pot shot out of his window, shoots him with a pistol.
Yeah.
And kills the Norwegian. And they never understand him. There's this language barrier.
Right.
Kom der vekk. Det har ikke en bikkje i. Det er en slags ting. Det imiterer en bikkje. Det er ikke virkelig. Kom der vekk, idioter!
This is just the weirdest thing that's ever happened to these guys.
Right. This language barrier that would have solved everything.
Exactly. That's so cool.
Yep.
So this dog is now the science team that we're introduced to. So it's essentially, we don't really know what they're doing. they've got varied skills. There's like a radio man. McCready's a pilot. That's why he's there. There's a doctor, and they're just kind of there to like monitor equipment. It's never really explained like what they're doing there, and it's not really important. But we have the science team essentially of various men.
Yes.
And they take this dog into their base.
Right.
And the dog is just kind of sneaking around and he's up to no good.
It's just like picture just like a husky, like a dog, a Malamute, I think is what this actually is. Like just like those innocent white eyes and just like that stoic face, tongue hanging out. Like imagine what you would have to do to make that look menacing.
Yeah,
he does it.
It's more and Morricone does it. Yeah, because I think it's all soundtrack stuff. Because the soundtrack to this movie is really good.
Yeah. This was before Carpenter started doing his own soundtracks, which I like Carpenter's soundtracks a lot. But
I think he did them. He just didn't do it for this movie. Yeah. I don't know if it was before, but
this is his first. This was Carpenter's first like major studio release too.
He's doing a performance in Portland, but I can't afford it. But he's doing some non-soundtrack work stuff.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, he's super cool. They're just like, what the hell's going on? Let's check out that base and see what's going on.
Yeah.
So McCready and Dr. Copper head on over to this Norse base, and they find that it is burned up. And they find two really important things here. One, a gigantic block of ice that has been hollowed out. Right. Like pulled up out of the earth and hollowed out. And it's very intentional here that the block is big enough to contain many things and is not explicitly a shape.
Right. It's like a big tub.
Yep. And then the other thing is they find this crazy mutated body.
Has two faces.
Yes. That is known affectionately in the fan community as Split Face. Split Face next to a jug of kerosene.
Yeah.
And it's just this mutant, like, two people tied together, and it exists in real life. Like it is a practical effect and is super gross looking.
Yeah. Fun fact about this base, the Norwegian base is just the American base after they burned it down. They shot this last.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's smart. So they take this body back, and Dr. Blair, who's played by Wilford Brimley, who like
in his least mustachioed role,
he's great though.
I love it. It's so
like
good.
It was like at no point did I ever think like, oh, like when growing up and seeing Wilford Brimley and stuff, did I ever think like, oh, he's actually a really good actor. But I really like him in this.
He's great. Like he's deliberate here, and just the range that he shows extending into full on mania later on.
Yeah. Yeah, he's wonderful, and he's performing this autopsy. A little trivia that's really interesting is he's the only person on set who like wasn't grossed out by the autopsy because he's like a cowboy.
Yeah,
like he goes and kills animals and tears them apart for food.
Yeah,
out in the desert. No, on the reg. So him doing this like these animal organs,
he would field dress you at the drop of a hat.
100%. If he had his way, he'd field dress a lot of us.
But he's performing this autopsy on this burned body that is distinctly inhuman aside from these human aspects, and he finds these organs that is just like it's this mess.
Well, what we got here is what appears to be anyway a normal set of internal organs. Heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, intestines. Seem to be normal.
And this gives way to one of my favorite transition scenes. Just a fun little detail here. They watch taped game shows for fun.
Yeah, they have. Did any part of this make this seem appealing to you? Because it did for me.
Oh God,
I was like, I could go hang out in this Antarctic base for a season.
Gary, all the time.
I don't know how this one ends.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I could just say like that kind of isolation and just like hanging around, smoking weed, playing computer chess.
Yeah,
like
drinking scotch. Like, oh man, no, like I just like that's one of those things. I seek out stories from people who've actually gone and done this, and like that documentary that I mentioned before was really kind of the kickoff for that. Was kind of like, oh man, just to go and be at the end of the world, You
Yeah.
know, like
Into it.
the notion of being like of being a lighthouse keeper is similarly attractive. However, you have to give a lot of tours if you're a lighthouse keeper.
Yes.
Also being in a fire watch, that seems
Yeah.
very appealing to me as well. But like Antarctica is just is the huge part of it. Although I imagine I would get sick of the people that I was in base with. It doesn't
I
matter
mean-
if you're just around 10 other people. There's gonna be an asshole.
And that happens too. I went on our science museum here in Portland has a sub docked in the river that you can do a tour of.
Nice.
And I'd never done it before. And I was always kind of like, it didn't scoff, but it wasn't like super interesting to me. And then I did it last month, and it was incredible. Like, have I talked to you about that on air at all?
No, you haven't. Gary, you're a tall man. How'd you fare? Because I've been on subs and boats too, and just I'm hitting my head all the time. You're a good like 2-3 inches taller than me.
The getting through the kind of the bulkheads was difficult, but inside any individual room I could stand. However, like if the sub was actually operational, I would not be able to because what they did, and this was interesting, because the guy who did the tour, it was like he was paid by the Army to get people not to join the Navy. Like I've never heard somebody who like is interested in and appreciates something and has history of something talk about it in a way like get somebody to not do it, because it made it sound like pure hell. And one of the things that made it sound like hell is that when they first took off, they would have all their cans of food on the ground, so you had to walk on them. So I wouldn't be able to stand up for like the first half of it, and then eventually could as they ate their food. But it's again, like no showers. You had like parts of your bunk have food, so I wouldn't be able to lay down all the way.
Yeah. No, you bunk in shifts, so like when you get out of bed, somebody gets right into it.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're smelling it, and nobody showers. So you're just it's just like this disgusting stink pit. Like it just sounds like the worst possible thing.
Yeah.
And the big thing he was saying that like made it tolerable that people liked was soft serve. He's like, yeah, they get this soft serve ice cream, but it was for some reason similar.
That's
to
what they tell you to get you to go to the hospital to get your tonsils out.
100%. Like or like just like, oh man, you'll like eating in the dorm. Like they're soft serve. But the thing that made me think about this and maybe I was just like looking. They had like this big stack of VHS tapes, and I was just kind of looking at it longingly. Like I don't know why I like the idea of having like being somewhere for a summer and having 20 movies to watch over and over with like a group of dudes, but like that sounds nice to me. I don't know why.
That's basically what I do anyway. Like aside from the podcast, I live my life like an elderly prisoner. So
there's something that's appealing about that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I don't want to be at this Arctic base because of all the killings and murders.
Right. But no, just like to pull a season, to pull an Antarctic summer, you know?
Into it. Stretch goal.
Well, no, all you have to do, you have to apply, prove that you're of sound health, and the NSF pays for you to be there. Like it's totally a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's start banking episodes.
6 months worth. No, I just like it sounds like I'm joking because I'm laughing, but like it really is a delightful idea to me.
No, I'm not. I'm not really joking either. Like I think it sounds really cool. So the crew puts this dog that they have with all the other dogs, and the other dogs are all sleeping when it comes in. But the way this is shot and the way the music is done is so dreadful. I love. And the dog kind of crouches down and starts making these noises, and these tentacles sprout from its back.
And it's showed in shadow, and you think
Yes.
like, oh, this is going to be like a discretion shot, right? Like, oh, here are these tentacles, here's something awful happening. Then nope, extreme close up on the head splitting apart.
Yes. And then one of the other dogs it's heartbreaking. It's trying to get out.
Yeah.
And is biting the fence, like cutting its gums and cutting its mouth open, trying to bore a hole in the fence. But it gets sprayed down with this acid, which is just, that never comes up again, this acid spraying ability that these things have, but it's real creepy. So if, they hear this is going on, Mac throws the base on alert and tries to get a flamethrower.
Yeah, he calls in Keith David, my third favorite character behind Mac and Wilford Brimley, playing Childs, to come in to do the honors with a flamethrower, which I don't know why they have flamethrowers around there, but
I presume just like for ice exploration,
That's
or
the
like
thing,
something gets frozen over and they in an emergency they have to thaw it really fast. That's my only guess.
Yeah.
So they kill the monster dog,
But one gets out through the ceiling, like you see it tentacle up into it.
Which is super cool. And they're just like, well, shit. So they're having this meeting at this point, and Blair kind of lays it out. He says that Wilford Brimley says that they're dealing with an organism that can perfectly imitate other life, And Clark, who's the guy who's the dog guy.
Yeah, he's the quiet, beardy guy.
Yeah. And this is when it becomes the like, who do you trust?
Yeah.
Doppelganger thing, because he's like, how long did you spend with the dogs? And he's like, why do you ask? He's not like, I don't know, 2 to 3 minutes, an hour. He's just like, I don't like where you're going with this.
Yeah. But just like we see him disappearing to go be with the dogs because like that's his job,
Yeah. And earlier, there's an amazing shot, or maybe it comes a little bit later.
No, it's earlier when the dog goes in and we see the shadow of him walking into the dorm when Clark is sitting at his desk. Yeah,
yeah. So we don't know who it is, but somebody motions to the dog, like just like come here, like let's go do thing shit, like just like we're gonna go have a thing party.
Yeah.
I love that thing too. Interesting trivia. I read a bunch of trivia about this.
Me too.
They used a silhouette of somebody who's not on the crew for that shadow, so you couldn't point them out.
Nice.
They actually took in like somebody from like a key grip and had him do it, which is so goddamn cool.
That's so smart because they anticipated that somebody was going to freeze frame it.
Yeah. This is the best articulation of the who do you trust story that I've like seen.
Yeah,
it's my favorite. So they're seeding these doubt, and then they're kind of looking through these Norwegian notes, and they as they're kind of using those notes, they go and they find a flying saucer.
Yeah,
which is the one from the credits.
Yeah, where it crash landed, right?
Yes,
which is over 100,000 years old. They presume Windows. The radio operator who's real cool. He looks he looks super 70s, but he says, we just need to burn everything, and nobody wants to do it because again, this is the find of the century.
Right. This is going to make our careers like we can't just destroy it, but he's scared. As well, he should be.
Yeah.
Blair is using his awesome old computer to do these, and anytime this computer shows up, I'm into it. Doing this calculation, and it's like the computer in any computer that just has a very specific output. Like it just kind of says a full sentence for the audience, but in a way that a computer never would.
Yep. It's like the computer at the beginning of Vacation.
Yeah. I love that program. Yeah, so this computer determines, given how much time they have and how effective this is, this could assimilate the entire world.
Yeah, within days.
Yeah, and there's a 75% chance that somebody has already been turned.
Yep.
He also finds out that even cells that are quote unquote dead still live. Again, like Mountains of Madness.
Yeah, and we get kind of the first bit of human violence here as they realize one of the crew members, Bennings, is kind of acting strange, and he's outside. There's an amazing shot, like these awesome prosthetics of his hands, kind of like clawing out. Looks similar to like a Half-Life zombie a little bit.
Yeah, he's on his knees too. Like he's kind of like he's prostate, and like I love that dichotomy of him being like, because you get this sense, and this kind of bears out. Is that like there's still part of him in there? So like
he's screaming, like his eyes are wide.
Yeah, he's this is a thing that's happening to him. So maybe he went outside because he didn't want to hurt his friends. And they torch him, but alive, and it's that scream is really otherworldly and great. Yeah, super scary.
They layer it over top of itself there.
Yeah. So good. And as they're out there, they see Wilford Brimley sneaking around the helicopter that's out there, which is a thing that makes you go,
what's Blair up to?
Yes.
And now they realize that they're trapped because his behavior extends from surreptitiously going around these helicopters to chopping up the radios and killing all the dogs. Because having run these simulations and found these numbers, he knows that kind of humanity's only hope, or at least he says, is for them to die here.
Well, that's the
that's what he says.
That's what he says, and it's open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Right, like, which is super cool. Like this idea that like that could be why he's doing it is because he knows what's going on. He could also be doing it because he's trying to stop them from getting away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they eventually kind of take him out, and he's like firing at them. He's going to kill them, and they lock him up in this tool shack. And he says, "Hey, watch out, watch Clark."
Yeah.
So at this point, they're like, "We don't know who to trust. Hey, Doc, could you do a blood test?"
Right.
And they're like, "Yeah, they probably could, but it looks like this door to the blood has been tampered with and destroyed."
Yeah.
There's only one person who has the key, who's Gary, who's the commander.
Right.
There.
Yeah. And in the meantime here, just again, sowing seeds of distrust, Fuchs has gone missing. And so
Yes.
they set aside this kind of budding witch hunt to go find him, and they find this burned husk with his glasses on outside, and they kind of surmise that he immolated himself rather than be turned because he saw what could happen.
He either saw what could happen or he had already started to be turned.
Right.
Like it's possible that he got bit by the dog or something like that, and was just like, I need to protect my friends.
Yeah.
So Mac and Knowles go to visit Blair during this storm. Who's locked up there.
Yeah.
And Blair has fastened a noose at this point.
Yeah, which nobody remarks on. Actually,
Yeah.
like it's not. It doesn't like, hey, what you planning on doing? And
What
this
you
is, hey man, just hanging a painting in the middle of the room, huh?
Yeah, just hanging a mobile, a human flesh mobile, bone mobile.
But this is this is one of the first kind of indications, because like so far, knowing kind of Blair shares the same knowledge, or we know the knowledge of what's happening through Blair, right? So he's kind of played up. He's played up as the only sane man, right?
Yes.
And this is kind of, for me, one of the first inklings that something is really wrong here, because like, oh, is this my just in case noose? Because in case like, I'm gonna do this now, because if I really want to kill myself, I want to make sure that there's as little barrier as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if he made it and then turned and decided he wanted to live, or like exactly at what point the developments that we see later happen.
Yeah, we don't know. Like, no point being. What we're surmising is when he gets turned.
Yes.
So we know he gets turned, and there's arguments for, again, that way that like paying attention is rewarded and things are left kind of vague in a really genius way in this movie. There's arguments for multiple places where it could have happened, and that's a real fun place to be online. You can look up cool discussions and people bring up points of evidence and stuff.
Yeah.
Because all the little things that he does that are evidence serve as evidence for different things.
Right.
So like the idea that he's possibly hanging himself, is he human and he doesn't want to die? Or is he one of these things and wants, because we know that when they're dead, they can still infect things. So does he want to appear dead and lure somebody into his room?
Yeah.
Or does he want to appear dead, get buried, and be found by another civilization, or the rescue team or something like that?
Does he want to try again? Yeah.
Yeah, there's multiple interpretations for everything he does, and it's so clever. So as they're heading back, Knowles ends up finding this bloody shirt with Mac's name on it.
Yeah,
and we found out that when these things mutate, they actually kind of burst out. So he cuts his line loose.
Yeah,
and
just like leaving Mac for dead.
Yeah, it is a terrible storm. It's like freezing outside, and they're gonna leave him out of the base. And MacReady, who is amazing, when they come upon him, he's got dynamite.
Yep, he's got dynamite, and his like beard is frozen.
Yeah, and he's like, if you shoot me, everyone goes down. Everything gets burned down.
Yeah, and like this is a coup, right? Because Knowles comes in and says, yeah, Max turned, and Childs, Keith David, takes charge.
Yes.
But in this kind of scuffle, Norris has a heart attack, and this is kind of the inciting incident leading up to where the film concludes.
Yes. Is this also the scene where the dog guy tries to come up? He's like, "Hey, Mac's right," and walks up to him and gets shot in the face.
That
comes next. Yeah,
that's during the showdown. Yeah,
that's amazing. And during this time, Norris has a heart attack. So we're thinning people out, and that's going to end up being important here in a moment. So
yep. So as Doc Copper goes to resuscitate him using the paddles, right? This amazing scene where you get clear, and then as the shot goes, the chest opens up like this gigantic gaping maw with teeth and bites off Copper's forearms.
Yes, and this Norris monster is great because he's so weird and mutated. Like, so he has the gigantic. He looks like when he has the big vertical mouth on his chest. He looks like one of the Ghostbusters toys, the real Ghostbusters toys. Yeah, I feel like there's one of those that did that.
Oh, it was the Egon where the eyes popped out, I think. That
was the line, but there were all these like different ghosts that just look like people, but you squeeze their legs together and they do something like this.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what it reminds me of. And eventually his head gets knocked off during this, the way that heads do.
Yep.
And grows little legs like a spider.
Yeah.
Scurries around.
And I love dialogue where what a character says is exactly what you say. Like if you say, "Oh shit," and the character says, "Oh shit," Like you know that whoever wrote this knew what they were doing, or whoever directed it. When he sees this head grow legs like a spider, I think the head might be upside down. I might be conflating this with a Doom monster.
It's not.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not upside down. So I am thinking of a Doom monster. But he
Or
says
the Isaac monster.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
is what he says.
Yep. Which is like it's funny, but it's also like there's nothing like it can survive as its head.
Yep.
As this little like this monster. There's no like singular thing.
No.
The thing is contains anything it needs to be, as we'll see, and we're not even done. We haven't even seen its final form. Like it is, it continues to be different things. So they're like, Mac is like, hey, I know I'm real. I'm gonna tie all you motherfuckers up, and we're gonna figure this stuff out.
Right.
And Clark is like, yeah, that's a great idea, and starts walking towards him and just gets straight up shot in the face.
Yeah, because Mac thinks that he's coming for him to wheel in for a punch.
He was.
Yeah.
There's a scene really earlier that where Clark pockets a syringe or a scalpel.
Mm-hmm.
Like they show him like it's really subtle. Like he reaches over and grabs a knife.
Yeah.
So it's like a really cool like MacReady is just on top of shit. And obviously Clark was with the dogs. So then Mac comes up with the wire test.
Yes.
This is the most famous scene in the movie.
Yeah.
Probably.
And Mac's hypothesis is, as we've seen, any part of this can survive separate from any
I'm gonna
part.
draw a little bit of everybody's blood. We're gonna find out who's the thing. Watching Norris in there gave me the idea that maybe every part of him was a whole. Every little piece was an individual animal with a built-in desire to protect its own life. You see, when a man bleeds, it's just tissue. The blood from one of you things won't obey when it's attacked. It'll try and survive. Crawl away from a hot needle, say.
And so what he does is he takes this coil of copper wire and heats it up at the end of at the end of the flamethrower. And
Yes.
they've got all this blood from people, people who were dead before. He tests Clark's blood, and he's clean, right?
Yes.
So Childs says, "Yeah, how do you feel? You killed an innocent
you're a
man."
murderer.
Yeah.
Like they kind of hate each other. And Childs, Keith David is the same guy who plays the character opposite of Rowdy Piper, right? And so he's really, and I think he's in. I feel like he's in the Stuart Gordon From Beyond as well.
Oh yeah.
I could be wrong about that, but he's so good at playing this kind of like just fed up with his shit and hates everyone around him from the get-go.
Yep. No, Keith
Kind of
David's
character?
amazing. Like Keith David is he's a wonderful voice actor. He was great in season 6 of Community. But like he's just one of these amazing underrated actors.
Yeah. He's super, super good.
Yeah. Keith David was not in From Beyond.
Oh, okay. I was mistaken.
You were thinking of Jeffrey Combs, who is in every
Well, I wasn't thinking. I was thinking of the black actor.
I know,
Who was at the very least, give me some credit here.
No, it's just funny how Jeffrey Combs is like the
He's the Lovecraft. He's the adaptation. He's Stuart Gordon's muse.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, but yeah, Childs is there, and they're all there. Gary, who they suspected, so far, he tests clean as well, and this is another kind of like funny line where he starts out saying like,
I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, and when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch.
That doesn't happen until later.
Oh, it doesn't?
He's gonna test Gary last.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. You were the only one that could have got to that blood. We'll do you last.
He says, like, I've got my suspicions about you because Gary was the one with the keys to the medical thing. And
Okay.
he specifically says, we're testing you last.
Okay.
So they go through like a bunch of different tests where nothing happens with the blood and everyone's not sure what's going on until eventually they test
Palmer.
one of the Palmer. And the blood freaks out,
and the
jumps
blood
out of his hand.
runs.
Yeah, and runs away. And while this is happening, one of the guys, not Windows. One of the guys starts shaking in the chair at this point.
Well, they're all tied up in a line. It's like they're on like a bench or something like that.
Yeah, they're on a couch, and he starts like shaking and freaking out, and everyone else is tied to him. So they're flipping the fuck out, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
So they and I love the way this scene is edited too, because as people become clean, it just cuts to them doing the test with no like discussion or anything. It's like
it doesn't show them like untying them. It's just okay. All of a sudden, Child is up and he's holding the flamethrower while Mac does uses the wire, right?
Yeah. So they've got this guy who's tied up to them who is starting to transform. And they're just like, get me away.
Yeah.
And eventually he ends up transforming, and like Windows walks up to him to try to stop him. But Windows pauses because like this is his buddy and this is fucking real weird.
Yeah.
So his face eats his face.
Yeah. like it's this weird kind of crazy kiss. Like just it opens up. It's almost like that Uzumaki scene with the spiral head devouring the other guy. Like Windows is a goner.
Yeah.
I liked Windows. He was fun.
Yeah, Windows is great. There's a part where he's like, "Did you raise anybody yet?" And he's like,
"Reach anybody? We're 1,000 miles from nowhere, man, and it's gonna get a hell of a lot worse before it gets any better."
Well, stick to it, Windows. Stick to it.
Like he sounds like a real like Simpsons character.
Yeah. Well, Windows is also the guy who like when they're smoking weed in the break room. I love that break room with the pool table and the pinball table.
We gotta go there.
Yep.
We gotta get stuck in a good place.
But no, he's like saying, after they find the UFO, he's like, they like the aliens. They're here all the time. The government's covering them up. They taught the Incas all they know.
Yeah. Windows is pretty good.
Yep. But Windows is also a goner, given the kiss of death by Palmer.
Eventually they'll go. This is also the part where Palmer like jumps up to the ceiling like the Exorcist.
Yep.
It's real good. They use the flamethrower on both of them. And they're like, okay, we're all clean. The only person we haven't tested is Blair.
Yeah. Blair out in the tool shed.
Yeah.
And they go out there.
And we trusted Blair up until this point. Remember, like the movie has done a great job of like misdirecting us here.
But they go there and they find out like, oh boy, he's tunneled out. Blair isn't in here anymore.
Yeah.
And even worse than that, Blair has, been going around and disabling all the vehicles we knew, but not to what purpose. He's attempting to build an escape craft.
I love that. Like that they found a half-built flying saucer that he built. So imagine if they didn't have that scene where the saucer crashed in the beginning, or even if they never actually found the original version, if there's just this monster and then they find Blair building a spacecraft.
Yeah.
Like that would have been a really cool way to tell you that this is an alien. So the MacReady says like, hey, at this point he's given up trying to spread to the rest of the world. He wants to escape so he can freeze and go back to sleep.
Yes, the thing specifically, like
yes.
he knows this time it's doomed, but there's gonna be time, the help's gonna come, and that's when it's gonna get real.
Yeah, so they split up because they're idiots, and they're in a which one do I trust story. So it's really good to split up.
Yeah,
and one of my favorite practical effects in the movie is Gary is walking around by himself, and Blair corners him, and the look on Brimley's face, like when they stares him down, and he just touches him
on the face, like he gives him like a holy man kind of thing,
and reaches into his face, like stretching out, like making his skin plasticine.
He's wearing his face like a glove.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, like that's an amazing shot. And eventually, because he's absorbed Gary and because he's mutating into his final form, he eventually transforms into this like gigantic like beast that the camera, like he's not even, he shows like tentacles fly from the ground and stuff. Like he is under the ground in a big bad way.
He's never shown all at once. In a bit of trivia here, they were going to show all of him, but
there's a stop motion version of it they made.
Yeah, but it didn't look good. So they kind of left it at these hints. Like he, for all intents and purposes, is the base at this point.
Yeah, and the other people die as well. There's some other people who are wandering around. This is where Rawls or Calls or
Knowles.
Knowles gets it here.
Well, Knowles, like we never see him die. Like he just walks off screen and just never comes back.
Yeah, presumably this is where he dies because we know he's not there in the end.
Right.
So it's kind of burrowing throughout through the ground here, and it's trying to get Mac, and Mac says,
"Fuck you too."
and blows up the base, which is incredible. Presumably destroying Wilford Brimley. Childs, who's been wandering around, kind of comes in while Mac is really hurt. And the last shot of the movie is them being like,
You the only one who made it?
Not the only one.
Did you kill it?
Where were you, Charles?
Thought I saw Blair. I went out after him. Got lost in the storm.
but neither of them trust each other.
Right. So all that they can do is drink.
And as they freeze to death, like they're like Child says, like that fire made this warm. It's not, and then like McCready's like, it's not going to last though.
Yeah.
You know, interesting. Like in like trivia stuff, John Carpenter says that Child is definitely a thing at this point, and the reason why is really cool. I went back and watched it. He doesn't breathe during this scene.
Really?
Yeah, he does. I mean, there's a couple places when he exhales, when he takes the alcohol, there's a little bit of steam that comes out of his mouth. But if you watch them going back and forth, McCready, it's obviously really cold, and there's huge billowing, like you can see his breath, and you can't with Child's.
Wow, I didn't notice that. And
I didn't notice it either, but it was again, like I just saw it when I was looking up like an interview that John Carpenter had done about it, and John Carpenter's like, no, it's obvious. It's Child is the thing, which doesn't mean that he's going to, like, it doesn't mean doom. It just means that because the thing is also wounded,
right,
at this point. Like it's not like they're both like two. So it's like at first I didn't like that, but I kind of like this idea of one of them being enemies. They don't know what the other person knows, but they are both too hurt to do anything about it.
Yeah. And I don't know, like it's this weirdly benign form of nihilism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like, well, fuck it. Gosh. What's funny is the piece of trivia that I'll bring to this is that the edited for TV version of this is much darker. Because at the end, instead of ending, I forget exactly what it cuts out, but it ends with a dog kind of like running away from the base over the snow.
Yeah, and the dog looks back at the base like, haha, and then continues on.
So it ends with the apocalypse. So
yeah, that's an alternate ending that they had. There was also another alternate ending that they didn't shoot that has McCready being
tested clean. Yep.
Yeah, tested clean.
It's like they shot it, but they never for the purpose of I think it was the editor who said, yeah, you really need to like film like a non-downer ending for this. Yes. And so they shot it and for the purpose of like, okay, well, we'll test it and see. And then Carpenter just didn't include it, and like that has never shown up.
No, it's been shot, but no one's ever seen it. Which I love that. I love things that are, no one's ever seen. But so the ending ends up being like simultaneously a huge downer, but also ambiguous in like the best possible way.
Yeah.
Like we don't actually know. So even if Child is a thing, but they're still like, they can live after they're dead. Like this is just going to happen.
Yeah.
Again, there's been a tease at sequels of this a bunch of times. Carpenter was going to do one. There's going to be a miniseries on, I think, the Sci-Fi Channel. Yeah. Like a 4-episode thing. And have you seen the prequel? Like the 2011 The Thing?
No, I haven't, but that's mostly because of my fondness for this movie. Like it's a Dumb and Prejudice thing. Like I had to just like take a look at it and get an informed opinion about it. But like I know that it's the Norwegian Outpost and that not a lot of people liked it, but there could be something cool about it.
I haven't seen it either. To my mind, I was like, I don't want to know how the Norwegian Outpost found the thing.
Right.
Like it doesn't. That's just not to me. Like and the story, I like the blanks being where they are. And I mean, someday maybe I'll watch it, but it is it's a rare. Like a lot of times, some of my favorite stuff, like I would like to see sequels or see expansions on it. And this is a case of where I really don't.
Yeah. There is a Thing video game. Made for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. That is a sequel to this. It does some real dumb stuff with the story because McCready is alive in it. Yes. But it does take place, with the rescue crew that comes to US Outpost 31.
It's also I remember this being, and I've never played it. I just know from hearing Scott Sharkey complain about it because it came out around the time he was on a lot of podcasts. Is that the whether something is an alien or not is not consistent.
Right.
So you can have somebody on your team walk around, they never get exposed to the thing and then turn into other thing.
Yeah.
Which that misses the point completely. and is terrible.
Yeah, but like mechanically, what they do with like trust and whether or not your squad members will, do what you ask them to do, and testing people to like raise trust. There's a seed of a good idea in that. It just it's really not. It's not executed on very well. Like I like it because it's a survival horror game and it's based on The Thing, but like it's super loosey goosey in a way that a betrayal is a wrong word. It's just it is not a good treatment of the source material.
No, not at all. Which is kind of a bummer because that's a cool mechanic and it's something that's explored all the time in board games. Board games and card games do that kind of who can you trust
from the humble werewolf up to some game only you would know about between the two of us,
like Coup and stuff like that. Which like I don't end up, or like Battlestar Galactica or something like that. Which I don't really like playing those board games as a multiplayer thing. Partly because there's not. Like, I mean, the Coup is a simple version, which is like not really this, because you don't have a lot of moves. But Battlestar Galactica, you're supposed to be kind of playing the long con as the thing, and I never feel equipped to do it. But I would love to explore it in a single player space.
Yeah,
like I would love to. Like I want to play that where I don't have to be the villain, but I have to figure out who is.
Yeah,
and I haven't seen that mechanically explored to my satisfaction.
Right.
I think so. It is a thing that has popped up. And
The Thing is a thing.
The Thing is the thing is the thing. There's nothing else I could like. I mean, I feel like we were appropriately
effusive
about this, and I don't feel like I exaggerated.
No, like it's one of those things because like eventually you expect the magic to wear off with something, no matter how much you like it. Like it becomes rote, or it becomes like, oh, like you start appreciating it in kind of like different but kind of like more kind of like well-worn and smoothed off ways. Like this is like one of a handful of movies that feels fresh to me in a different way every time.
Yeah, it is. And it's not like I watch it, every year or something like that. This is I watched it twice for this, and it was the fourth and fifth time I've seen it, respectively. So it's like that's not there are movies I've seen more.
Yeah.
But it's every single time it impresses me, and it is just that it really comes down to that economy of like no subplots.
Yeah.
Like if you like, I really wish, and there are other pieces of media I can think that do this, but like, boy, do I wish there was more.
Yeah.
Like more movies, no subplots. Get them out. I don't want to see it. Like I'm not interested in it. All that time can be better spent doing something else.
Yeah. Well, like what's funny is, I don't know, like just the lack of economy, or just kind of like a real bloated film will load character detail into a subplot. Like, well, we need to give, this character or this pair of characters their space.
Yes.
Right. As opposed to kind of using every part of the buffalo and revealing that stuff through like really scant stuff in the main line. Like this is all spine is what this is.
Yeah. Well, and it's worth pointing out too, that like, it's not, this is not a character heavy movie. Like you get a great sense, you get a sketch of everybody,
right?
And you get a really good sense of McCready.
Yeah.
So you can do that with this movie that you maybe couldn't do with a lot of other movies. Like a character based movie, that's going to be a hard thing to eschew those subplots. But for this, like the point is not, who these people are. Like Windows is great. I get a little sense of him, but I couldn't I couldn't write a book from his perspective.
But that's enough.
Yeah, no, you definitely get. It's okay to have two-dimensional characters.
Yeah.
As side characters, and lean into that. If what you're trading that off for is this kind of economy and kind of perfection, like this kind of lean beef.
Yeah.
The effects, which we didn't really lean into, like all of the stuff is just like blood and plastic and animal organs kind of put together in a way that is like really creepy.
Yeah.
In a way that is really effective, because even though some of it is not, you can see through it.
There's some really weird matting and like compositing. The place where it's most apparent is in the Dr. Copper getting killed, like the battle scene. Like that was like, oh, that's very obviously like some like rough matte and composite work.
Yeah. But for the most part, just the fact that everything is there, or almost everything is actually there, seeing it makes a big difference. Like, oh, this is sharing the space with these people.
Yeah.
So.
And so much of what we see anyway is still. Right, like it is a shot of something terrible that has happened right before we got there.
Yeah, it's the space jockey from Alien. Yeah. So good goddamn shit.
I love it so much.
I am way excited. So
cool. Yep. So
and
I don't think that is so. Shame on you if you listen to this and you didn't watch it. I don't think that's a movie.
If you can't do horror movies, and this is the way, that's fine.
As is, shame on you is too strong. I don't know if it's a movie you can spoil. Actually, again, because of that 2-dimensional character thing. Like, oh boy, Knowles Parker transforms. Like, who's Parker? What?
I would not want to know that Wilford Brimley was a thing.
Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah.
That would be the only thing, and that's not. It's a twist, but it's not portrayed like a dun 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 kind of twist. It's like it's portrayed like like I was never really totally sure before, but boy, these guys are really fucked now. Like it does add to it, but it's not like knowing that Bruce Willis lived in an 1800s village the entire time or whatever. Yeah, or however those movies go. But yeah, I love it, and I'm happy we had a chance to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are we doing next time, Cole?
Well, Gary, next time we're doing a brief episode about Titan Souls.
Titan Souls.
Yeah, this is an indie game that came out a year or two ago, and you can get it on Steam. You can also get it on like Vita or like PlayStation, PSN kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. I'm looking forward to articulating mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, it's pretty much all on the page there. It's for as kind of like varied as some of the stuff you do is. It is a very shallow game.
It's very shallow, and it's. I feel like, I mean, we'll talk about it, but it's trying to be unshallow in ways I don't think it's successful at.
Right.
Like, I'm never like into exploring in that game, but there are large stretches of space between things for some reason.
Yeah.
And then that space served a purpose in Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it serves a purpose here.
Right. And in a series of podcasts where we're talking about a series that uses space so well to its advantage.
Yeah.
And the fact that it put fucking souls in the title, and
it is. Well, it's more than that. Like, it has, that kind of focus on like learning a pattern and acing a thing. Like, that's what it's banking in on.
Oh, for sure.
It just doesn't quite get there.
Yeah.
In retrospect, let's say we didn't plan these out as far in advance. Right after this, and I'm going to record an episode. Check it out, Comrade. We're going to talk about Dark Mouse. That would have been a way better thing to talk about. But sadly, too late now. It's too late now.
We're embarked.
Yep, we are embarked. That ship has already sailed. After that, we're going to be doing an episode about the movie Labyrinth, which is, out of all the 3 movies we're covering, is even less connected than the thing. But the commonality is that was a major part of Souls of Darkness, the book I wrote, which definitely is about Dark Souls. And so we're going to be talking about the kind of those 2 things. Another brief episode as we really, honestly, have time to play Shadow Tower Abyss.
Yes.
So we're going to have Nick on that episode, Nick Daniel. Of Latchkey Kingdom and the illustrator for the book. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the book and talk a little bit about the movie Labyrinth and how those things come together.
Yeah.
And yep.
And the off season is going to conclude, like we said, with a discussion of Shadow Tower Abyss, which is so good.
Yeah, which is super cool. Like, I'm so glad that we had the chance to do this dive into Shadow Tower.
Yeah.
For this, like, I really want to explore the other Kingsfields like fully too, but like just having that series kind of knocked off is going to feel really good.
Yeah.
Because it's really cool. And then after that, first impressions episode of Dark Souls 3.
Yeah. It's like right here. We're like 6 weeks away, Gary.
Yep. Throwing this out there, we've said this on social media. If you spoil anything in Dark Souls 3, I will cut you.
You mean cut you out of your life, right?
I will mute you. I don't want to know enemy names. I don't want to know area names. I don't want to know anything. I've already had something not ruined, but I had like a minor thing. And yes, it maybe seems like I'm being a baby, but I just like respect the way why it doesn't hurt you to to not put that stuff online.
Yeah. I heard the area name.
I did not hear the area name. I heard something else, and let's not confer notes because we would multiply misery. But the thing I heard is it's like something I could have guessed, but I'm annoyed by it all the same. And it's just like, I want to go in blind, man. Yeah. Like, just why is that a problem for some people? Like, there's been a discussion around it where it's like, oh, you're a fucking baby. Well, give me a break. Like, why do you care? Why like the way that I want to engage with this thing I care a lot about, why is it hurting you that I don't want to engage in it the same way you do?
and also it's, we're not saying it's not our responsibility. We are purposely avoiding media related to this. Yeah. All we're saying is like, hey, don't bring it to us.
Yeah. Don't tap me on the shoulder with it. The thing I saw was a journalist who was like, he tweeted the headline of a thing he wrote that was like how to do something in the game. Like nobody has the game yet. Like, what is that? Is that just for other people who have preview copies, but you're just like putting it out on Twitter? Mm-hmm. Man, what are you doing?
If you're sensitive to our sensitivity, I will say that we have our reasons beyond just this is the way we want to enjoy the game. I want to preserve that sense of wonder. When I talk about my impression of this thing, I want to be fresh. I don't want to say, well, in this event previously in this article, I knew that so and so. Like, I can't act that well, guys.
Yeah. Well, it's not even like, for me, it's not even acting. It's just, the example I bring up and I keep bringing up is the Turtle Knights from Dark Souls 2, which all of the preview material said that they fall back on you if you try to backstab them. That was obviously meant to be a surprise for people who played the game and who were expecting it to act a certain way. And like, I just had that ruined for me. Yep. And that's a bummer. I would have rather have not had that ruined for me. And seeing title cards pop up on Souls games is one of my favorite things. Like, I want to be in my living room, sitting in my sleep pants, and be like, whoa, the abattoir of bloodletting, like I want that,
Yeah.
That said, once the game comes out, if you are one of our patrons, which you should do anyway, head on over to patreon.com/duckfeedtv. If you pay $2 a month, you can hang out in our Slack channel.
Yep.
Our Slack channel is going to be the best place to be for Dark Souls 3 stuff.
I can very comfortably say that.
I 100% feel confident that is going to be the most fun place to talk about this game with the least amount of bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, there's not going to be anybody like gooding anybody. Everyone is going to be respectful. Like, it is the best community I've seen online. And that should be a motivator. If I was just listening to the show and didn't want to support us on Patreon, that would be a motivator for me to have a place to talk about Dark Souls 3 with like 300 people who are really well curated.
Yeah.
So you got that going for you. I would recommend that. Also, you could do it because you're nice and you want to support us.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference for us.
It does.
Yeah.
Certainly does.
You can go to facebook.com/bonfireside chat and check out what is assured to be a very like a flurry of activity as Dark Souls 3 comes out. Hopefully no spoiler kind of stuff. But one of the cooler things we've seen is a fan named Doug made some random generator things for both character names and place names, which when I'm feeling down, I just randomize something.
Yeah.
So
they're pretty good too. Like it's I haven't had anything pop up that's like a super dud. It's pretty good.
Undiscovered Euratio, the final amalgamated widower.
Yes. Yep. Very good.
Yeah.
Other than that, ratings and reviews are helpful. Thanks for sticking with us during this weird off season.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to if you're not hearing this because you're off during the off season, then we'll see you in Dark Souls 3 time.
Yeah. And I appreciate everybody who said kind things about the off season stuff. It's nice to hear nice things, but this is an adventure for us, and to hear that it's resonating feels very good. Yeah.
So until next time, what should they do, Cole?
They should watch out for flamethrowers because we're all things, you see.
Yes, indeed.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
I just cannot believe any of this voodoo bullshit.
Giles, happens all the time, man. They're falling out of the skies like flies. Government knows all about it, right, Mac?
You believe any of this voodoo bullshit, Blair?
Giles, chariots of the gods, man. They practically own South America. I mean, they taught the Incas everything they know.